Welcome to the Digital Forge, the podcast where we explore how technology, innovation, and people reshape industry and shape the future of this region. I'm David Richards. My guest today is Doug Liversidge CBE. Doug is one of Sheffield's great industrial figures, a former master cutler, a steelman, entrepreneur, investor, civic leader, and in later life, novelist. His story runs through post-war Sheffield, the British steel industry, national service, Libya, precision engineering, university spin-outs, medical technology, football, philanthropy, and personal tragedy. This is not just the story of one man's career. It is the story of Sheffield itself. Steel, ambition, reinvention, civic duty, and the constant fight to turn knowledge into industry. Before we begin, please follow the Digital Forge on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube so you never miss an episode. Doug, welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So, where did it all begin? Where did you grow up?
I grew up on a council estate in Sheffield, Parson Cross, well known for other people like David Blunkett, and with a background with a father who came out of the war and found very difficult to settle down and not find a job, and a mum who was a cleaner at Boots the chemist in town.
So quite a humble background then.
We were very poor, but everybody else was. So I never felt poor, but everybody else around us was poor.
So council estates back then were different places to what they are now, aren't they? You always hear these stories. I mean, this is in the 1930s, isn't it? 1930s, 1940s. What was life like on Parsons Cross back then?
It was quite a disciplined life. Everybody policed themselves, and the people on the road policed you. People still had a degree of decency about how they should behave to each other, and so it was quite a nice upbringing.
Were you out on the streets playing football and playing games and all of that stuff?
I used to play football. Where I lived, it was backed onto a field and a fishing pond near the Five Arches in Sheffield, very close to Hillsborough Football Club. And I used to play football on that field on Saturday. Then I would play football for the company I was working for on Saturday afternoon. Then I would go into Longley Park and play football all day Sunday.
Wow. And which school did you go to?
I eventually went to Firth Park Grammar School. I started at Shirecliffe Junior School, passed the 11 plus, and went to grammar school.
So passing the 11 plus back then was an important thing to get into a grammar school, which would then normally put you on a university path.
You should have seen my mother's face. It was. I mean, nobody else passed. All my friends stayed at the Shirecliffe Senior School, and I was the only one that went to Firth Park. And my first day there was so traumatic. I'm surprised I managed to survive it.
Why was it traumatic?
Well, when I got there, bear in mind, my birthday is in August.
Yep.
And I'm not very tall.
Yep.
So I'm very shy. And got on the bus, and I had parents who had no education at all, really. My mother grew up in a Catholic village and left school at 11, I think. And my father left school very early. And they had no idea about education. And so it was something really new to me. And I got to the door, and in those days, Firth Park Grammar School, the teachers wore gowns, which was quite threatening for me. And but there was a desk, and you had to stand there in front of it, and this guy in his gown said, name, like that, just name. I said, Douglas Brian Liversidge. He says, aye. IOI? I had no idea what he was saying. IOI? And you can imagine, I was terrified. And he said it loudly. He then said, IOI. And I never found, well, I did find it eventually meant was Brian spelt with an I or a Y. Because that took time, everybody was going away and I was the last. And we were all separated into the different houses. And, I was in King's and so on. But I was the last and they'd all gone. And I walked around the corridor of the building, not knowing where to go. Terrified. Absolutely terrified. And you'll find out at the end of this conversation somewhere that I was the man that actually gave the closing speech for the school when it was knocked down and something rebuilt. And so I set off, and I didn't know what algebra was. I didn't know anything. I didn't, and it was a torment. There were 125 people in the year, I think. And in my first year, I came 119th out of the whole lot. And my second year, not much better. And I was struggling, really struggling. I couldn't go home and say to my mum and dad, how do you do this? How do you do this? I couldn't do it because they had no idea. So I struggled. And like a lot of people in this life, there was a teacher, and he was the chemistry teacher. And he picked up on that I wasn't stupid. And I suddenly found myself, I was quite good at chemistry. And that led me on to being quite good at physics. And in the end, in my third year, I was 13th out of 120.
Wow.
And I suddenly got the message. The message was really I wasn't stupid. And I got that message. But I only got 5 O-levels, maths, physics, chemistry, geography, and English language. But they were pretty important from where I was. And it came to going to the sixth form. Well, the teacher said, oh, no, you shouldn't go into the sixth form, get yourself a job. And which is what I did.
Just to go back to that, so you didn't go into this, if you went into the sixth form, you just to do A-levels and then maybe to go to university.
That's right.
So university was not ever on the cards for you, presumably?
No chance. No chance.
Back then, did you even posit the idea that you might go, no?
I went to go to work. I don't think I thought about it deeply, but, we were a poor family, and I suppose I was going to earn something to help towards our family life. Not that my parents ever made me feel poor.
So you left school then, basically at because of your age, 15, but really 16,
I was 16.
after O-levels. And you joined the English Steel Corporation as a laboratory assistant, presumably because you were quite good at chemistry.
Well, not quite like that. It didn't work like that. There used to be a place in Sheffield called the Youth Employment Bureau. And what you had to do, you had to go to this place, and a guy had a card index, and there were plenty of jobs going in those days. And he said, oh, well, there's and what have you. And he said, well, I'll get you an interview at English Steel. And after about 2 weeks, this was in the break, the summer break, I went back in. I said, I've not heard. They've not written to me. So he said, I'll do something about it. And he rang up the personnel director, or the personnel manager, I guess. And he rang him up, called him Scott, I remember. And he said on the phone, well, send him down now. So I was still, but my confidence was a little bit better, but not massively so. So I went down, and there was this guy, a big desk, and this guy sat behind me. Tell me what result and so on, and he was talking to me. And he ended up by saying, "You're not very good, are you?" These are the words I remember. He said, "You're not good enough for our graduate scheme or anything like that. I don't think you're good enough for our technology scheme." He said, "Well, it's possible I could put you on a technician scheme, but I'm not going to put you on that, but I'll give you a job. You can go to the chemist laboratory, and the chief chemist will look after you." A man called Kidman. And so that was it. I got a job, £9 a month.
So basically, your entire career was this bloke going through a card index and thinking, "Oh, that one might do."
Yeah, just do that. That's how. So that's how you got a job in those days. But there were plenty of jobs going, as far as I recall. And so I went. First morning, still a bit nervous about things, and I'd been told to ask for the chief chemist. Well, I went to this laboratory on Edset Street, and the chief. And I said, "Chief chemist," and some secretary said, "Oh, you can't see him, he's busy. You can see Mr. Brown, who's the assistant chemist." I said, "Okay. He can't see me." And they handed me down till I got to this guy, I don't know, I suppose like a foreman in the chemical laboratory. And he says, "Well, I've got a job for you." And at that time, English Steel, and I think British Steel, were very benevolent to people who were disabled. And they said, "You can work with George." Well, George still lives in my memory. And George was a mentally disabled person. And his job was to pull a barrow around all the factories. And bear in mind, English Steel then employed 14,000 people. It was massive. It had a big foundry, a big forge, a drop forge, a tool company, what have you.
Yeah.
It was massive. And when the railway wagons came in, there was a British standard of how you took a coal sample. Climbed on the coal thing, and in each corner you went into foot deep and took a coal sample. And then you carried the coal sample back to a little brick hut on Carlisle Street, where you ground the coal samples. I don't have to tell you, the place was terrible.
Yeah.
No showers, no nothing. And George would go and collect the samples, and I would pull the barrow. That was my first job, which I did for about 6 months, and I tormented George, and I'm really sorry that even now I think of him. But eventually they said, "Okay, you can come into the lab and we can do something." And I did. We used to do the analysis of the coal, the calorific value, and do analysis of gas. And I was doing that, and still living on Parson Cross and going home to Mum and Dad. And then I saw a job in the paper, which was at English Steel Corporation, in the technical department, which was in non-destructive testing. And I applied for it. I just wrote a letter to the company. And somebody was surprised that I'd written, I work in the company, I'd written this letter. And I went, and I got that job, and I went as a lab's assistant in non-destructive testing. And that was the start of a bit of a career in what I was doing.
So how old were you then when you got the?
I suppose I was 17, 18. And I worked in non-destructive testing for a while. And at that time, they had a brilliant, as they still have, I think, personnel system at English Steel. And they looked after people. And one day I was walking down the corridor and I saw a notice saying there was a chance of a scholarship. And I sort of cheekily applied for this. And I was interviewed, and much to my surprise, I was called in and said what we were agreed to do. Sheffield University to do a final year final year of the metallurgy course. And I was working, doing high national certificate. I was doing day release, night school, and working, grafting hard, really, as well as doing a full-time job. And I went for the interview, and they said, the Sheffield University have this course where you do the final year of a degree course and you get an associateship in metallurgy as a result. And we're going to put you on that. And you'll be full paid, by which time I was earning about 10 quid a month, or 12, I don't know what it was, but it was not a lot of money. And we'll go on that course and see how you get on. So I did. And I went to Sheffield University, quite apprehensive. I'd only been going to what was Sheffield, now Sheffield Hallam University, but was the College of Science and Technology then. And the education was done in a prefabs down Bowling Green Street, so it was all pretty low level. So to go to Sheffield University, this fantastic place, and somewhat apprehensive. And I got there, and most of the kids were sixth formers who'd come in, and although they'd been at university for the 3 years, they're still, from my perspective, were still a little bit immature. And, well, they weren't mature. They were very mature because they were chasing women and drinking a lot of beer. So they were mature in a different way. And but I went for this final year, and it was like being at Butlins. They had Wednesday afternoons off.
Oh, to do sports, of course.
Yeah, well, it's supposed to be. I used to play at snooker with my pals. But, it was...
That's interesting, because when you went to grammar school, it was a culture shock.
Yeah.
Because you got suddenly institution, gowns, formality, all of this. Because, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems to me like because you've been in employment, that you sort of knew how the world works a little bit more than these undergraduates. And did you feel that you knew a little bit more than they did?
Well, not only that, I did feel that. I felt more mature than a lot of the students. But I remember the professor of steelmaking was giving a lecture, and I'm sitting there thinking, don't do that. We don't do it. I'd been working on the melting shop floor. And I knew, and technology changes, and the steel making methods then, big open hearth furnaces, and some electric arc and some induction. But he was talking about steel making, and I'd got more up to date knowledge sitting in that seat in
that's really interesting, because there's this whole thesis now, particularly with what's happening in the world with artificial intelligence and all this other stuff, that is doing the job and an apprenticeship a better education than the theory of academia?
Without doubt, by a long way. When you're talking to me later, I'll be telling you about when I was chairman of the Learning and Skills Council. And my theme was, and very much, that people needed interpersonal skills. They needed different skills to do a job properly. And they also needed a trade you could fall back on.
Yeah.
And of course it's a good place for universities, and I'm a big supporter of universities. But I think that what we did is to say to everybody who's got to go to university, otherwise you're a failure, was a disaster.
Do you think that going to university helped your career just because you could say, I've got a degree and I've checked the box?
Oh, it helped me immensely. It helped me immensely for a slightly different reason.
Yeah.
When I'd finished, we were finishing this course, and I was 21, and I'd got a girlfriend then, and I was engaged. Because people got married when they were very young, weren't they? And I went back to with an idea, should I do a master's or something like that? And that's what people talked about. It seemed as if it was relevant. The personnel director said, no, you're going in the army. Because it was national service. He said, we think army for you, lad. So he didn't.
How old were you then?
I was 21.
So you're the personnel director at English Steel could turn around to you and say, you're not going to go and do another degree.
No.
You're going to go in the army.
Yeah.
They had the power to do that.
Well, I was an employee, and he was the guy that was looking after me. He was the guy that had sent me to university. He had detected, I think, in me something that I had not detected, that I didn't know about. And so he said, he said the army will do you good. So I went in.
Could you imagine that happening now?
No.
The HR director says, actually, rather than going to do another degree, we're going to send you into the army.
Yeah. Well, the next bit is you can't imagine happening now, because I was talking to my then girlfriend, and I said I'm going away for 2 years, and she said, I said, between us, we said, if you're married when you're in the army, you get £2.10 a week marriage allowance. And if you save up £2.10 a week for 2 years, it was enough for a deposit on the house. So I said, okay, as soon as I get in, I'm going to tell them I want some leave to get married. And so off I went into the army.
Whereabouts were you stationed?
I was stationed in Honiton, in Somerset, I think it is, in Honiton, and I went into REME, Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers. And after the first week, I had to go and see the sergeant, or sergeant major or somebody, forgotten who it was. He said, we think we'd like you to join the potential officers thing. Well, and you have to go to the War Office Selection Board. I said, well, I'm getting married, and I want some leave to get married. So they all thought she was pregnant, but she wasn't, because it was the days before you didn't get pregnant, before you were married. And so he said, okay, well, you've got a date to go to, they called it WASB, I've forgotten what the letters are short for. You go to WASB, and then we'll go take you from there. And so they gave me my leave. So I went home for 3 days leave, and I got home on the Friday night, got married on the Saturday, and my new wife and I went to London. We were still hard up, but we went to London, and I booked a boarding house near King's Cross. Didn't know anything about London. Went into this boarding house, and my first wife said, "Oh, I can't stay here," which she whispered, like I'm whispering to you. And I said, "No, I can't." So we packed our stuff up, and we said, "Let's sneak out." And we were sneaking out. I'm walking out with a suitcase. This woman came out and said, "Where are you going?" I said, "To the laundrette." So we went, and we had a day and a half honeymoon. But then I had to go back into the army, and then I went back.
This is an incredible story. So this was just after the Second World War, presumably.
Well, no, we're now 1956.
Okay.
56. National service was still going on. It was towards the end of it. It finished in about 60. But up to then, everybody had to go into the military or do a job that made not give them an excuse for not going in.
So I know that you ended up in Libya. How did that come about?
Well, I did pass the exam to be an officer, and suddenly I'm an army officer. This is it. And Yeah, I'm a big hit. You didn't think it, though, because everybody else was an army officer in the trainee unit. And but I was the only one that was married and saving up for the deposit. And my wife went to live with my mother and father, who were in Tynemouth, Newcastle. And she was working as a nurse, and I was down in Aldershot. And we could occasionally go home. Now, I'd been married for a long time, and for well, I don't know, 3 months by then, and had not been home. And I'm sorry, I must have got a bit of hay fever. I'm sniffling a bit. But I used, but the army officer, you first of all had to do the training, which was very rigorous, but I loved it. I was very happy with that. And there were two sets of training: training to be it was training to see if you were suitable to be an army officer, and the training really was based on seeing if you grumbled or complained, and if you did, you were RTO'd, returned to unit.
Right.
RTU'd, and I didn't want to do that. In the unit I was in, everybody was public school except for 3 people, and there was only me, and I'd got a nice thick Yorkshire accent. So anyway, and so again, I'm now thinking inferiority, but the reality was it wasn't long before I realised that the very best public schools, Glads, were brilliant, but the average, I was better than all of those.
Yeah. Why were the best? Was it like Eton and Harrow and all that? Why were they brilliant? What made
the
them?
ones that were good had got a wordliness about them. They were already mature. They'd been brought up, but it wasn't just the money. They had got the personality, and they stood out.
Confidence.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's what it gives. That's what it gives you.
And so there was that little group at the top. Then there was a gang of them that I soon found out that whatever we were doing, whether it was classroom work or even in doing training and battling, that's what we did.
Do you think you learned leadership skills?
Oh yeah, I did that. Well, I learned that I'd got some.
And also skills that you could apply later in life in leading companies. You did learn something from that army officer training.
Yeah, well, I learned a lot about myself, of course.
Yeah.
When we were halfway through the course and you're going to have this weekend break, the week before we did a week living in a trench in Salisbury Plain or somewhere. You used to lived in a trench for a week. But at the end of it, you were promised that you'd go home for a weekend. You can imagine how I was feeling as a married man, and we were all ready to come home. And the sergeant major lined up the trucks for us to get on. It was 10 miles back to the unit, and he stood there, and I couldn't wait to catch the train to Newcastle. And the sergeant major said, "Trucks, are you ready? Off you go." And we did a 10-mile force march back to camp.
Oh my goodness.
So by which time it's 1 o'clock on whatever it is, Saturday, and I've got to be back for Monday morning. Then the captain of our little unit came in and said, "Everybody's rifle, I want to inspect your rifle." And he came round and he inspected people's rifles, and one after he said, "That's filthy, yeah, I can't, go away, come back in an hour's time and I'll examine it again." And so it was 4 o'clock before I was finished. And then I'd got to get into London, and then I get a train and so on. But part of that was to see if they could break the spirit.
It's, yes, mentally to see work. Yeah, of course it was.
So that exercise was called marathon.
Yeah.
And I had a marathon smile. And I still have.
Yeah. Wow. So did you go to any exotic places? I think Libya.
Well,
later in.
I went to Cyprus first of all.
Wow.
I was sent to Cyprus And of course, I'd never been abroad or anything like that. And I'm now a young subaltern, now slightly full of myself. And I got to the unit, and they were very nice. The people greeted me and took me in hand, and the colonel in charge said to me, I want you to do a bit of duty. I want you to judicate on this case I've got with somebody done something wrong. I've forgotten what. And I listened to the story. I said, I don't think there should be any punishment for this guy. I'd only been there 2 days. I don't think he should be punished. I forgot what he did. And that night, there was a sergeant's mess due. And the sergeant's mess, we're having this due, and the commanding officer said, we ought to go. You show your face, and we'll go together. And we went together into the sergeant's mess. Behind the bar was this guy who and he was so fussed. He said, have a drink and have a drink. I don't have to tell you, the colonel took me back to his house. He had a bungalow. We were living in their tent. I was paralytic. I'd been in Cyprus 2 days. 2 days. And I'm in the colonel's house. And he got a 17-year-old daughter who I was dancing with. And I went to the bathroom, totally collapsed. And he had to ring the military police to come and knock the door down to get me out. So that was on the Saturday night, and we'd arranged to have a barbecue down the beach on a few people, including the colonel and his daughter. And I was dreading seeing him. And when he came out, when he saw me, he said, "Great night last night, Doug."
Wow. Did you think you were going to get into trouble?
Yeah.
Of course you would. So what happened after Cyprus?
Well, then I went off to, I was posted to Libya, to Benghazi, and went to Benghazi, and there was a unit. It was the Welsh unit of the Welsh Guards, the Welsh Regiment unit of them, and the 2nd Tank Regiment, TR2 or something. And so we had a lot of vehicles and a lot of military equipment. And we had a workshop of 72 people. And there was the major in charge, and then there was me. And so I was in charge of the workshop and these 72 people, of which there were 35 Arabs. I can't do the arithmetic, but the rest were soldiers, except for 2 ex-German prisoners of war. Now, 1 soldier did the work of the 35 Arabs, and 1 prisoner of war did the work of 10 British soldiers. Well, we were all conscripted, of course.
Yeah.
And we had lots of Saracens and all that kind of equipment. Beast camels, we did all the rescue work.
What was Libya like back then? Was it a dangerous place? What was going on?
It was very much on edge. Gaddafi was in the army, and he was a corporal or something in the army.
Yeah.
But he was revving everybody up. We were on standby for military action at any day. And Libya had a king, King Idris.
Yeah.
And whenever the king had stomachache, we were ready for action. And if we went to the local cinema, which we didn't do very often, whatever, and on the local cinema, there was pretending that the Libya had an army of some sort, but they didn't. And so there was a lot of tension, but it wasn't a big deal. I mean, I wouldn't pretend there was a lot of the regulars. Of course, I'm now working with regulars. They were looking for just having a scrap. I mean, instead of training, it would have been great to have a fight.
So how many people, you're an officer obviously, but how many people did you have under your command at that time?
Well, I'd run the workshop of 72.
Wow. It is a bit of an incredible story, isn't it? To go from, Parsons Cross to being an officer in Libya in charge of...
Yeah, I think the thing that's more to me incredible when I look back at it, they said you're also in charge of desert navigation, and when anybody comes out, everyone wants us to go and see the desert and what have you, and so on. And if there's any problems, you should do it. So I'm in desert navigation, and I had to almost teach myself. I got some instruction. But all you have to guide yourself is a sun compass mounted on your Jeep, on your Land Rover, sun compass, and your watch. That's all you'd got. And you had to know the date of the year, the day of the year, and what have you. And I would get a map reference from where things were. And if a vehicle broke down, as they did, I would go. I did a rescue mission when they had rain for the first time for 35 years, out in the oases and so on. And I could cross 1,000 miles of desert, 1,000 miles, just from a sun compass and my watch.
Could you do it now? Would you know how to do it now?
I wouldn't dare to do it. I could do it. I think I'd have to remind myself, but I did it. By which time I got so much self-confidence, it didn't bother me.
Wow!
And I did a rescue mission where this oasis. I had about 150 miles or 30 in the desert, and they never had rain, and we had to go and rescue all the vehicles.
In the same way that we were discussing the idea of an apprenticeship versus a university degree, some people believe that national service would benefit our young people. Having done national service, how do you feel about it?
National service was a fantastic benefit to me. It made my life. It changed my life. It had changed me totally.
Did it give you confidence?
Yeah.
Did it give you confidence that you didn't have?
Yeah, when I was at that age, I was totally confident. When I was in the army, I wanted to stay in the army, and to the extent that I sent a telegram to my wife and said, that money we're saving for a house, get it out of the bank tomorrow. Somehow find your way to Benghazi. You've got to go to the Libyan embassy. She had to do all sorts of things and get yourself here. Because bear in mind, I'm living in a desert of 5,000 men and no women. I'm married. I'm the only married man. So, I'm not drawing any pictures, but and to her everlasting credit, she did. And we decided to stay in the army, but there was a quirk in the rules. I'd only got 3 months left to go. And if you got you'd had to have more than 3 months left before you can get a regular commission and sign on for a regular commission. So they said, you're going to have to go out and come back in. I said, that's what I'm going to do. So when my time came to come home, so happened I came home and my wife couldn't catch a plane, so she was in Benghazi and I was back in Sheffield.
So how long were you supposed to be in national service for, and how long did you actually spend in it?
2 years, and I spent 2 years in it.
Right, interesting. Do you think it gave the same sort of confidence that going to public school gives young people? That it proves that they can do things and lead things, and
probably. I don't know about my interpersonal skills, but it gave me confidence of being in command. I mean, I really did think I was in command. When people came into my office, they stood and saluted. Wow. Can you imagine? I'm 23 or whatever. From Parson Cross, and they did that. So it gave me that great confidence, which did serve me well and still does.
So you returned to the UK after 2 years,
yeah,
in Cyprus and Libya, and people saluting you. What happened to your career?
Well, you had a guarantee that people would take you, that the companies that you left would take you back. The government insisted that. So I went back to English Steel. And I can't tell you how full of myself. Well, full of myself's the wrong word. How confident I was.
Yeah.
And I went back. They didn't know I was coming back. And the personnel people had changed. And I came back and said, well, I'm here now. What are you going to give me? And they said, well, you better go into the metallurgical department. And I went in there and was passed along. And the first job that the person asked me to do was to fold some letters up and put them in envelopes.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, how could this happen to me? And because they had no idea what I was or what I'd done, and nobody was interested, were very interested, except for one person who was one of the managers. And I'm still going back in the army in my brain at the time. And he came to see me and said, we've got a job for you. I said, oh, thank God for that. I can't stand this being a clerk. And he said, we'd like you to be section leader of part of the non-destructive testing department. So I went and did that. And then 3 months later, they said, we'd like you to move up and do a bigger job. And so I started on my journey of my career, and the idea of the army sort of disappeared in the past.
So you were still at English Steel.
Yes.
How long did you stay there for?
22 years.
22 years. Was English Steel and British Steel the same?
No, English Steel was nationalised.
Right.
And it had then become British Steel. And so when they nationalised it, and they put all the steel companies together, then they did quite a number of major reorganisations. And if I'm looking back now, they tore the heart out of English Steel because its structure was based on having multiple outlets of their steel. If you make a steel casting of 200 tons, you don't make them every week, but you've got a facility to make steel. So you had to make steel into ingots to go into the rolling mills or into the forge.
Yeah.
And we had that was the method, and when it was nationalised, they took away just left the heavy forge.
Right.
And the big foundry.
So you've been there for 22 years.
Yeah.
And to a lot of people who maybe hadn't gone through what you went through, particularly with national service, they need the security of working for a company.
Yeah.
Now, you obviously made a jump from being a manager to an owner of a business. What?
Oh, the big jump really was before then. I was a manager of one of the departments, and the managing director rang me up. Well, not a bit unusual. And I went to see him, and he said, I've got a job for you, Doug. I said, oh, well, that's good. Yeah, I'm happy I'm going to be promoted. And I'll not bore you with all this, but in that moment, I went from having about 15 people to having 450 people working for me. And that day, on the following day, the chief chemist, Lawrence Kidman, working for me, he was already president of the Institute of Chemical Analysis and all that stuff. And I was a person who would when I talked to him, would say, "Mr. Kidman," and so on. I was in charge of all the instrumentation and development and refractories, in charge of all the test houses, and in charge of all the metallurgical areas, but not the research. I didn't know that there was a research area. So suddenly, I took a 3-step jump up.
Wow.
And
what do you think they saw in you?
Oh, I thought they thought I was good looking. No, they didn't. I think I probably conducted myself, which my self-confidence showed, and the military training was perfect for that.
Yeah, it does make you wonder about that pathway.
Yeah.
Now with some sort of national service it doesn't necessarily mean military service. It can mean a variety of different things. An apprenticeship just strikes me as being, in today's world, a much more efficient path for young people, doesn't it?
It is, but there were a lot of people who went into the military and just did a job and sitting in a stores and what have you, and they hated it.
Yeah.
And came out and it was just a waste of 2 years of their life.
Yeah.
There was you could make your own opportunities, but sometimes it was not easy for people. So I'm aware of lots of people who hated the military service and felt it was a waste of time.
So when did you leave English Steel then?
For reasons which I still don't understand, one of the guys with English Steel had left and he'd gone to work for a company called Firth Brown, and another big steel company.
Yeah.
And a subsidiary, which was Rivet on Stampings. And he'd been put in as managing director, and he said, Doug, I'd like you to come and work with me. He'd just taken on this job about 2 months before. I said, I'd like you to come and be sales director. And it absolutely tickled my fancy that although I was a technical guy, and I wasn't a particularly brilliant metallurgist, and I thought, well, I might just suit my way forward. And I went to Rivet on Stampings. He said, I can't make you director straight away, so you'll have to be a manager, sales manager. So I gave up a fantastic job and everything to go to be the sales manager.
Was it a risk?
Turned out to be much bigger than a risk. It turned out to be a tough time.
Why?
4 weeks after I started, the company was taken over by a similar company, Firth Dairy, out in Darley-Dale, if you see them.
Yeah.
Tower, who'd got a sales director, got a sales manager, and what have you.
So basically, you were taken over, and there was already somebody doing your job.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Well, I struggled on. The sales director was a very unusual personality, and he rang me up and said, "You better come and see me." And I went to see him, and I knocked on his door and went in. He said, "Wait outside my door. I'll tell you when to come in." And that was at 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 4 o'clock he told me I could come in.
You're kidding me.
And I worked there.
Were you angry or upset or both? Or
I was a married man with 3 kids, and I was desperate to
keep your salary.
Yeah, keep my salary. And I worked with him, and he, as a man, taught me quite a lot, but none of it which I'm proud of.
Right.
But it was useful for my later career, because he was a guy that saw things differently from how I'd ever saw them, which is perhaps in an honourable way. And of course, on sales, it's a different life.
Yeah.
As you probably know, you see the side of human nature that I'd not been aware of. The people coming and saying, "Oh, I forgot I need to fill my car, and I haven't, customers, and I haven't got any money. Doug, will you make sure my car's filled before I leave," and what have you.
Oh my good, brown envelope.
Oh,
horrendous.
Yeah, and that was totally an anathema to me.
Yeah.
But I put up with it. And almost by accident, I had a reference from a friend of mine that there's a job going at Thornton, to which I applied. And much to my surprise, I got it.
So this is the late 1970s, is it?
It's 79.
Right. So you went to Thornton Precision Engineering.
Yeah.
And you met a young production engineer, didn't you?
I met her, and I remember the time. I remember the date. It was April the 1st, 1979, and the time when my eyes set on...
I've got to say, Pam's actually sat in the corner of the room here.
I'm just watching her face as well. Was the first time I saw her was at 25 to 10. Why do I know that? Because it was my first day as managing director, and I'd called a meeting for 9:30 of the managers to tell them my firm but fair and all that crap type of speech. And Pam walked in, sort of when I was reaching a crescendo. And my first words to her were, "And who are you?" I think I might have said, "Who the hell are you?" But she said, "I," with her eyes wide open, "am Pam Edwards." "And where have you been?" And she said, with her eyes even more wide open, "I have been working." And they were the first words that we exchanged.
What were your first impressions then?
First impressions was she was naive, but very committed and so on. But she wasn't very worldly, was my impression. I thought that somebody not very worldly and so on. I used to call her goody two shoes, GTS.
So you didn't rate her that highly when you first met her?
Oh, when I first met her, on the very early days, I didn't quite know exactly what she was doing. Quite an important job in the company, but I wasn't interfacing. At first, I'd got a lot of other things to learn and what have you. And but I began to dawn on me that she was good. She was good, but she was different from me. She had a different approach, and that particular different approach, which we recognised and talked about, has stood us in great stead in later life.
Doug, I think that's a perfect place to pause, because in part 2 we pick up with Pam and the story that followed, which includes marriage, business, master cutlers, university spin-outs, medical technology, football, philanthropy, and a deeply personal family situation. That was part 1 of my conversation with Doug Liversidge CBE. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow The Digital Forge on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube so you never miss an episode. And if you'd like to meet the speakers like Doug in person, join us at The Digital Forge, where founders, investors, policymakers, and industry leaders come together to discuss the future of technology, innovation, and regional growth. You can find upcoming events and join the community at forgedforgrowth.com. We'll see you in part 2.
You know the kind of conversations we have here, honest, ambitious, and focused on what's really shaping the future of UK industry. Now, imagine taking them even further. That's exactly what the Digital Forge membership is about. This isn't just another network, it's a proving ground where connection, knowledge, and opportunity collide. As a member, you'll unlock exclusive events and curated networking with serious builders, a private community platform for real-time support, and a content and knowledge hub packed with insights you won't find anywhere else. Plus, you'll gain access to exclusive discounts and the chance to learn directly from mentors and seasoned founders who've already walked the path. Everything we do is built on trust, clarity and intent. No noise, no theatre, just the right conditions for progress. So if you're ready to join the future of UK industry and step into a community built to accelerate growth, join other members at forgedforgrowth.com.